Listen closely, because this is not soft advice. This is a wake-up call. Somewhere along the way, too many women were taught to shrink, to doubt, to question their magic like it was a mistake. But let me remind you, you were never ordinary, never invisible, never not enough. Your worth does not rise and fall with who chooses you, who leaves you, or who fails to see you. You are not broken. You are buried treasure. And today isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering yourself. Self-worth is not permission-based. It does not wait for approval, applause, or acceptance to exist. It is not something handed down by partners, parents, bosses, followers, or strangers who only love you when you are convenient. Self-worth is intrinsic, permanent, and unmoved by opinion. The moment you believe you must earn your value, you begin to negotiate with your dignity. You start shrinking your needs, silencing your instincts, and editing your truth just to be chosen. But worth that depends on permission is fragile, and fragile things are easily taken away. Women are often conditioned to believe their value is confirmed externally. Be pretty enough, quiet enough, agreeable enough, successful enough, desirable enough. The checklist never ends and the reward is always temporary. One mistake, one boundary, one moment of self-respect, and the approval disappears. This system teaches women to chase validation instead of standing in certainty. It trains them to perform instead of exist. Over time, this performance becomes exhausting because no one can sustain a life built on pretending to be acceptable rather than knowing they already are. Permission-based worth is a trap because it places your identity in someone else's hands. When your confidence depends on being wanted, rejection feels like erasure. When your value depends on being praised, silence feels like failure. When your worth depends on being loved, loss feels like proof that you were never enough. But these feelings are lies created by a false equation. Someone else's inability to choose you does not subtract from who you are. Someone else's limitations do not define your capacity. Someone else's silence is not a verdict on your significance. Self-worth that is not permission-based is rooted internally. It is built when you decide that your existence alone is sufficient. It grows when you honor your boundaries even when they cost you comfort. It strengthens when you tell the truth, even if it makes others uncomfortable. This kind of worth is not loud for attention, but it is unshakable. It does not beg, chase, or prove. It simply is. And because it is self-generated, it cannot be revoked by rejection, criticism, or abandonment. Understanding this changes how women move through the world. They stop auditioning for love and start selecting it. They stop over-explaining their needs and start enforcing them. They stop attaching their identity to relationships, achievements, or appearances and begin anchoring it in self-respect. This does not make them cold or unlovable. It makes them whole. Wholeness attracts healthier connections because it refuses to accept anything that requires self-betrayal. When women stop asking for permission to be valuable, their standards rise naturally. They no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as honesty or neglect disguised as independence. They recognize that inconsistency is not excitement and that chaos is not passion. They stop romanticizing pain and start prioritizing peace. This shift is powerful because it is quiet. It does not announce itself. It simply withdraws energy from what no longer deserves access. Self-worth is not proven by how much you endure, how much you give, or how much you sacrifice. It is revealed by how you protect yourself. It is reflected in the relationships you walk away from, the limits you enforce, and the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. A woman who knows her worth does not need permission to take up space. She does not wait to be invited to exist fully. She claims herself daily, intentionally, without apology or justification. Choosing this mindset is not easy in a world that profits from insecurity. Industries are built on convincing women they are incomplete, that they must buy, fix, soften, or improve themselves to be worthy of love and respect. Resisting this message requires awareness and repetition. It means catching the moments when you seek validation and gently redirecting that energy back to yourself. It means practicing self-trust until it feels natural, not forced. Over time, this practice rewires belief, replacing doubt with steadiness and reminding you that worth was never missing, only waiting to be recognized by you alone, always without permission required. Pain does not cancel power. It does not erase strength, intelligence, creativity, or worth. It does not disqualify anyone from greatness or reduce their capacity to rise. Pain is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of exposure to life, to risk, to love, to effort. To be hurt means you showed up, and showing up has always been an act of courage. The lie is that pain makes you less. The truth is that pain reveals what was already inside you, waiting to be activated. Women are often taught to interpret pain as failure. If a relationship ended, they assume they were not enough. If a dream took longer, they believe they are behind. If they struggled emotionally, they label themselves broken. This narrative convinces women to hide their wounds instead of understanding them. But pain does not arrive to punish. It arrives to inform. It points to boundaries that were crossed, needs that were ignored, and strength that was underestimated. Ignoring pain does not make it disappear. Understanding it transforms it. Power is not the absence of suffering. Power is the ability to endure, adapt, and continue with clarity. Some of the strongest women were not protected, they were forged. Their resilience was not inherited from comfort, but built through experience. Pain sharpened their instincts, refined their judgment, and deepened their empathy. What once felt like damage became data. What once felt like loss became direction. Pain taught them what they would never accept again, and what they would always protect moving forward. There is a misconception that powerful women are untouched, unbothered, and emotionally distant. In reality, true power is deeply emotional. It is the courage to feel without collapsing, to grieve without disappearing, and to love without self-erasure. Pain expands emotional capacity. It teaches discernment, patience, and self-awareness. Women who have known pain do not fear depth, they understand it. They do not confuse chaos for passion or cruelty for honesty. Their power lies in their ability to recognize patterns and respond intentionally rather than react impulsively. Pain also clarifies identity. When everything familiar falls away, what remains is truth. Struggle strips away performance, pretense, and false attachments. It forces confrontation with the self beyond roles and expectations. In pain, women discover what matters, what endures, and what must be released. This clarity is power. It allows them to rebuild from alignment rather than obligation. They no longer seek to return to who they were before the pain. They evolve into someone more grounded, more aware, and more self-directed. The danger is believing that healing requires erasing the past. Pain does not need to be denied to be overcome. It needs to be integrated. The lessons carried within pain become tools when acknowledged. A woman who honors her experiences without shame transforms pain into wisdom. She stops apologizing for what shaped her. She understands that survival itself is an accomplishment. Each moment she chose to continue, even when exhausted or afraid, was an act of power in motion. Pain does not make women fragile, unprocessed pain does. When pain is faced, named, and understood, it becomes a source of stability rather than chaos. It teaches boundaries, self-trust, and emotional literacy. Women who have walked through pain know how to stand firm because they have already survived instability. They no longer crumble at discomfort because they recognize it as temporary. Their confidence is not loud, but it is unshakable, rooted in lived experience rather than illusion. Power that has been tested is power that lasts. Pain refines ambition, aligning it with purpose rather than approval. It fuels discipline, not desperation. Women who carry pain with awareness move differently. They choose relationships with intention, pursue goals with clarity, and protect their peace with conviction. They do not rush to prove themselves because they already know what they can endure. Pain does not cancel power because power was never dependent on ease. It was always built in the moments of difficulty, in the decisions made under pressure, in the refusal to surrender identity to suffering. Every scar is evidence of persistence. Every setback holds the imprint of strength. Power does not disappear in pain. It is revealed, shaped, and strengthened through it. Reclaiming identity begins with remembering that who you are existed before expectations were placed on you, before labels, roles, and responsibilities shaped your behavior. There was a self that moved freely, spoke honestly, and trusted instinct without apology. Over time, that self is often buried under survival, obligation, and the pressure to be acceptable. Reclaiming identity is not about creating someone new. It is about uncovering what was always there and allowing it to breathe again. Women are often taught to define themselves through usefulness. Be the caretaker, the achiever, the peacemaker, the supporter. Identity becomes transactional, measured by how much is given rather than how deeply one is known. Slowly, personal desires are postponed, opinions softened, and boundaries blurred. This erosion does not happen all at once. It happens quietly through compromise after compromise until the reflection in the mirror feels unfamiliar. Reclaiming identity begins when a woman notices that disconnection and decides it is no longer acceptable. The loss of identity often follows moments of transition or trauma. Relationships, motherhood, heartbreak, career shifts, and survival periods can pull focus away from selfhood. During these times, adaptation is necessary, but prolonged adaptation becomes self-abandonment. When everything revolves around meeting external demands, internal truth is neglected. Reclaiming identity requires acknowledging where and when parts of the self were set aside. This awareness is not about blame, it is about clarity. To reclaim identity, a woman must listen inward again. This means paying attention to discomfort, curiosity, and resistance. What feels heavy? What feels exciting? What feels forced? These emotional signals are not inconveniences, they are guides. Identity speaks through intuition long before it finds language. Trusting these signals restores alignment. It allows a woman to make choices that reflect her values rather than her conditioning. Reclaiming identity also involves releasing the need for permission. Many women wait to be validated before expressing their truth. They soften their voices to avoid conflict or rejection, but identity cannot thrive in hiding. Expression is essential to selfhood. Speaking honestly, even when the voice shakes, strengthens internal trust. Each act of authenticity reinforces the belief that the self is safe to inhabit fully. This process is not linear. Reclaiming identity involves grief for the time lost and versions of the self that were suppressed. It requires patience as confidence is rebuilt. There will be moments of doubt, especially when authenticity disrupts familiar dynamics. Some relationships will shift or fall away. This is not failure, it is alignment in action. Identity cannot be reclaimed without change. And change often reveals who was connected to the performance rather than the person. As identity returns, priorities realign. A woman begins to choose environments that support her truth. She becomes more selective with her energy and less willing to tolerate misalignment. This selectivity is not selfishness, it is self-respect. Reclaimed identity creates a sense of inner stability that does not depend on constant reassurance. Decisions feel clearer because they are rooted in self-knowledge rather than fear. Reclaiming identity also means redefining success on personal terms. Instead of chasing external milestones, a woman measures fulfillment by integrity and peace. She honors her rhythm rather than forcing herself into timelines that do not resonate. This autonomy restores a sense of ownership over life. Identity flourishes when it is self-directed. Ultimately, reclaiming identity is an act of courage. It requires confronting internalized narratives that say selfhood must be earned or justified. It demands honesty about desires, limits, and truths that may have been inconvenient in the past. Each time a woman chooses alignment over approval, she reclaims a piece of herself. Over time, these choices accumulate into wholeness. Identity, once fragmented, becomes integrated. The woman no longer asks who she is allowed to be. She lives as who she is, fully present, grounded, and self-defined. Owning your voice begins the moment you stop waiting to be spoken for. A voice is more than sound. It is perspective, truth, and presence. Many women learn early that silence is safer than expression, that being agreeable is more rewarded than being honest. Over time, this conditioning teaches them to second-guess their thoughts and minimize their feelings. Owning your voice means recognizing that what you think and feel has weight, even when it challenges expectations. The loss of voice often happens gradually. It starts with small concessions, letting comments slide, swallowing objections, choosing peace over truth. These moments seem insignificant, but they accumulate into self-censorship. When a woman repeatedly dismisses her own perspective, she internalizes the belief that her voice is disruptive or unnecessary. Owning your voice requires unlearning this belief and replacing it with self-trust. Self-trust is the foundation of vocal ownership. Without it, expression feels risky. With it, speaking becomes an extension of identity rather than a performance. Developing self-trust involves honoring internal reactions instead of overriding them. When a woman listens to herself consistently, her confidence grows. She begins to speak with clarity rather than apology. Her voice no longer seeks validation. It communicates truth. Owning your voice does not mean speaking constantly or aggressively. It means speaking intentionally. Silence can be powerful when it is chosen, but silence imposed by fear erodes selfhood. Vocal ownership is about discernment, knowing when to speak and when to observe, when to assert and when to conserve energy. This discernment comes from alignment with values rather than reaction to pressure. Fear often surfaces when a woman begins to reclaim her voice. Fear of rejection, conflict, or misunderstanding can feel paralyzing. But fear is not a sign to stop. It is a signal that growth is happening. Each time a woman speaks despite fear, she expands her sense of safety within herself. She learns that discomfort does not equal danger. This realization is liberating. Owning your voice also reshapes relationships. Authentic expression exposes dynamics that relied on compliance. Some connections may resist this change, attempting to restore the previous silence. This resistance is not proof of wrongdoing, it is evidence of transformation. Healthy relationships adjust to authenticity. Unhealthy ones depend on suppression. Recognizing this distinction empowers women to protect their voice without guilt. As voice strengthens, boundaries become clearer. A woman who owns her voice can articulate needs and limits without over-explaining. She does not dilute her message to manage others' reactions. This clarity fosters respect, both internally and externally. Voice ownership is inseparable from self-respect. Cultural narratives often portray outspoken women as difficult or intimidating. These labels are tools of control designed to discourage expression. Owning your voice requires rejecting these narratives. It requires understanding that assertiveness is not aggression and confidence is not arrogance. A woman's voice does not need to be softened to be acceptable. It needs to be honest to be effective. Owning your voice also involves speaking to oneself with integrity. Internal dialogue shapes external expression. When self-talk is dismissive or critical, vocal confidence weakens. Practicing compassionate, affirming inner speech strengthens the external voice. The way a woman speaks to herself sets the tone for how she speaks to the world. Over time, owning your voice creates a sense of embodiment. Words align with actions. Expression aligns with values. There is less fragmentation between who a woman is and how she shows up. This alignment reduces anxiety and builds inner stability. Speaking becomes natural rather than forced. Owning your voice is not about volume. It is about truth. It is about trusting that your perspective matters even when it is not echoed. It is about refusing to abandon yourself for acceptance. Each time a woman speaks from alignment, she reinforces her presence in her own life. Her voice becomes a declaration of self, steady, grounded, and unapologetically real. This message is for every woman who forgot herself while surviving. You are not late, lost, or lacking. You are becoming. Every boundary you set, every truth you speak, every time you choose yourself, you return home. Let your voice rise without apology. Let your past become proof, not prison. You are allowed to take space, to be seen, to be powerful. Stand tall in your identity, rooted in worth, sharpened by pain, guided by truth. This is not transformation for permission. This is reclamation. This is ownership. This is you. Unfiltered, fearless, intentional, whole, evolving, undeniable, self-defined, present, awake, sovereign, rising.